Last month there was a lot of debate surrounding the use of the knee stomp in MMA. This came following the UFC Vegas 36 bout between Modestas Bukauskas and Khalil Rountree, where Rountree won via a fight-ending knee stomp midway into the second round of the fight. Following the fight, many members of the MMA world took to the internet to express their opinion on whether or not this technique should be illegal. It's not the first time that this debate has been brought up, and it definitely won't be the last, so I'm not going to discuss the legality of the technique here. Instead, what this video is going to focus on is how we can defend against the knee stomp. First, we need to clarify what a knee stomp actually is. A knee stomp is just a lead leg sidekick to the lead knee of your opponent. But for the sake of avoiding a mouthful every time we talk about the technique, we're just going to call it a knee stomp. Now, this is not the same technique as the oblique kick that John Jones has found success with. The oblique kick comes from the rear leg with the arch of the foot facing up rather than down. Now, even though these techniques are quite similar, we need to make a distinction between the two because the defence for them isn't necessarily the same. So now we know what the knee stomp is, we can start looking into defence. With all defence and striking, the most important thing is understanding what body position or stance makes you most vulnerable to the attack. We need to start by forgetting about ourselves and focusing on our opponent and asking what stance are they standing in. If you've seen any of my previous videos, I've talked at length about how the best position to be in for the lead leg sidekick is a bladed stance with the outside of your foot facing towards the opponent. You can see this stance is different from the slightly more traditional squarer stance that is seen in a lot of striking sports. So if you see your opponent standing with a bladed stance, whether this is their default stance or they have just briefly entered into this stance, you have to be aware that the knee stomp is available to them. Now, this doesn't mean you should be panicking just yet, because your stance is also just as important. You are most at danger from the knee stomp if you are also standing in a bladed stance, because you are presenting the outside of your knee as a target to your opponent. Attacks to the outside of the knee cause more damage than attacks to the inside due to the natural angle formed in your leg known as the Q angle. This is the angle that forms between your thigh bone, your femur, and your shin bones, your tibia and fibula. Because the leg naturally forms this angle, any attacks to the outside of the knee are going to cause more damage by bending the leg in the way. If that isn't quite making sense, we can look at it slightly differently. If we take a table with three of the legs sitting exactly straight and one of the legs slightly bent in the middle, if I gave you a metal pole and asked you to hit one of the legs to break the table to the ground, which one would you hit? You would most likely hit the one with the bent leg, and you would most likely hit it in the direction that it's already bending, because it's going to take the least force to hit it in the same direction as it's already compromised. This same principle is why attacks to the outside of the knee tend to cause more damage than attacks to the inside of the knee. Another aspect of the stance is whether you're in an open or closed stance position. If you're relatively new to striking, an open stance means you're standing in an opposite stance to your opponent. So if I was standing orthodox, you would be standing southpaw and we would be in an open stance position. This is different from a closed stance position where we're both standing in the same stance. For example, I'm orthodox and you're also orthodox. You can be attacked with a knee stomp in either stance position, but it does the most damage when we're in an open stance matchup. This is because your lead leg and your opponent's lead leg are lined up more directly, so the outside of your knee can be attacked more easily. In a closed stance matchup, the lead legs aren't lined up as directly, so while the knee stomp can still cause damage, it is less likely to strike the outside of the leg and cause significant injury. One important thing to note is that even though you are vulnerable to the knee stomp in an open stance position, you're not the only one that's in danger. You have the exact same ingredients available to land an effective knee stomp yourself as your opponent does. The last area of knee stomp defence is being able to put all of these aspects together so that you have a general awareness of how to defend yourself against the technique during the fight. Let's use the fight between Bukauskas and Rountree as an example here. Moments before Rountree attempted the fight-ending knee stomp, he attempted the technique unsuccessfully. Following this failed attempt, Rountree moved from his default square stance to a slightly more bladed stance, which, as we have discussed, is more effective for landing the knee stomp. Rountree is also a southpaw, and Bukauskas is an orthodox fighter, which created the open stance matchup that we're looking for the technique. Bukauskas unfortunately didn't appreciate the threat of the knee stomp, and decided to jab, which puts him in a more bladed stance naturally and left his lead leg in the worst position possible to receive a knee stomp. The knee stomp is an incredibly damaging technique that I believe should be legal in competition, but definitely banned from the training room. Educating your training partners about when they are vulnerable to the knee stomp is going to be much more valuable to them than leaving them in crutches. Don't be a dick. Train smart so you can fight safe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you for the next one.